This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. It is another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking District 5 and 6 athletics week in, week out in the great state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney. We are joined by our East Idaho expert, Sean Kane. What's up, Sean?
Okay, so pretty much everywhere in Idaho had a snow day today, right? What's the top thing? Well, we're like the only ones who didn't. But it made me think, what are the top things to do on a snow day? Number one's got to be sleeping in. It was a consensus when I asked people, but I thought that was a good, since everyone was kind of enjoying a snow day today. What's the top thing? Maybe just that little extra bit of sleep.
Well, we are, of course, broadcasting live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. We have some people tuning in. If you want to drop in the comments, what is the number one perk to a snow day? Obviously, as a parent now, snow days are not as fun. But when you were a kid, what was the thing you looked forward to the most? Drop it in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen. I wouldn't have thought of sleeping in necessarily for me. I guess for me, it would have been like going outside and like snowball fights and stuff like that. But
yeah, that, like sledding and stuff came up a lot. But, once you kind of think about that sleeping in part, it's kind of rises to the top there.
Yeah. So you kind of conducted a straw poll.
Yeah. Some students, some teachers, because a lot of the students in my area were a little disappointed that their counterparts in East Idaho got snow days and they didn't. And I'm like, well, what would you even do on the day? Let's do some critical thinking, a deep dive intellectual journey into this. And, some couldn't answer. And overwhelmingly with students, it would be sleep in.
Right.
Or just sleep.
Interesting. So you're starting your own polling company, Sean. Can you tell me how the Iowa caucus is going to go?
Left or right?
Oh, man. Well, hopefully, it's all to the right. Well, for the most part, it'll be interesting to see. Of course, that's a whole separate discussion away from.
Wow, get us off track.
Yeah, Idaho high school athletics. All right, let's steer it back in here. When we think of big time wrestling, right, we do think of the Iowa Hawkeyes, right, at the college level, certainly. But Idaho is starting to make a name for itself on the wrestling scene, Sean. And last week was the biggest weekend of the year in Idaho wrestling. I would argue it bigger than state tournament weekend, not in terms of prestige, but just in terms of number of teams that are in Idaho competing. The annual Rollie Lane Invitational brought 98 different teams to compete over in Nampa, including several from East Idaho. We also had the 50th annual Buhl Invitational taking place in the Magic Valley, Sean, and there was a lot of impressive performances from East Idaho schools.
Yeah, when you look down the list of the weight classes, pretty much every one of them has someone from East Idaho. Century did well. Teton, North Fremont, Marsh Valley, and we'll probably talk about Marsh Valley as they came away with the second place at the Buhl Invitational. And now it wasn't extremely close from the host winning it, but it was also the 50th anniversary of the Buhl Invitational. 50th is, I don't know how many things have been held longer than that, right? When we think of tournaments or different things across all sports, 50th is got to be way up there.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast, which is our standalone wrestling podcast we do every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. Somebody said they had a program from Tiger Grizz Wrestling from like the 60s. So you're looking at 50 plus years for Tiger Grizz.
Wow, okay.
Not too many that are up there, that far ahead. So yeah, 50th annual Buhl invite. Yeah, let's start there. Buhl ended up, winning the title in pretty convincing fashion, but this is generally a good indicator of how the 3A and 2A state wrestling tournaments are going to pan out. And for Marsh Valley to come in and take second place, Sean, they kind of get lost in the hullabaloo of South Fremont, right? Kind of the premier 3A wrestling power, but Marsh Valley is also very, very talented.
Yeah, Marsh Valley, they just, for a smaller school, it seemed like they had the numbers, right? They had enough competitors in all the different weight classes to be competitive where you can take your team and compete against all these great teams. And that's what they did at Buhl. And just a great job. I was scrolling through here, and I believe they had one winner too.
Yeah, Cole Dalkey won at 152. Riker Gibson took first at 160 for Marsh Valley. And then the Morris boys, they didn't win, but they placed very high. So
yeah, and you look at all these results, they're in about every weight class. So a phenomenal job by Marsh Valley.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like for example, Rocky Morris of Marsh Valley took second at 138. The other individual champ from East Idaho came at 182. Riker Fulmer of Teton. He is the kind of the favorite, when we get to state at 182 and pound for pound, one of the toughest wrestlers there is. So Riker Fulmer from Teton, continuing to do great things there as well, Sean. And then I was trying to see Orrin Miller of North Fremont took first at 220, and then Zach Moss of Teton won the heavyweight at 285, Sean.
Yeah, so I mean, they're apparently being fed well in the Teton area. But yeah, good job that. And then at the 220, it was an all East Idaho final. You had Miller versus Adam West of Snake River. So that's, you love to see that too. But you like to see all those East Idahos there in the 1 and 2 spots, but lots of 3s and 4s doing well. And that's how you win those tournaments is getting places and getting those points added up. So nice job.
And Sean, speaking of all East Idaho finals, over at the Rollie Lane invite in Nampa, we had an all East Idaho final at 126 pounds. Now this was 98 teams: California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Utah, Idaho. Meridian was there, Post Falls, all these 5A and 4A squads. The 126 final came down to a 3A kid versus a 2A kid, both from East Idaho. It went the distance. Jackson Packer of South Fremont defeated Tucker Bowen of Soda Springs. Tucker Bowen, D1 commit. He's going to Wyoming to wrestle. And so to see Jackson Packer beat Tucker Bowen, it was an incredible final there at 126. Congrats to both of those guys.
Yeah, nice job there. And, just shows how, vast, and you guys have hit this on the mat chat, that the wrestling is, and how we have a wealth of coaching. And really just, it's not so much under the radar now, but man, wrestling in Idaho is definitely, I think it's been there, but now it's got a marquee and some lights on it, maybe LEDs.
That's right. So as impressive as the boys were over at Rollie Lane, the girls really stole the show, I thought, Sean. I think we have to start with Thunder Ridge. They won the team title at Rollie Lane. They ended up piling up a total of 158.5 points. Next closest was Reed High School from Nevada at 139. So they won this by nearly 20 points.
Yeah, and East Idaho seems to be kind of the hotbed for the girls wrestling, right? A lot of it, it's a state effort to get it going, but I kind of feel like East Idaho is kind of is the kindling to that fire.
Yes. Several individual champs from the girls' side as well. Taylor Brown of Thunder Ridge won at 100 pounds. She is a fantastic wrestler, favorite at state. You had Kiana Conrad, Blackfoot freshman, we'll talk more about in a second here, winning at 126. Zoe Ortiz from Bonneville took first at 132 as well. So congratulations to our individual champions from Rollie Lane. Kiana Conrad is a freshman from Blackfoot, Sean, and she has exploded onto the scene. So much so, in fact, that she was our Idaho Wrestler of the Week last night on the Matt Chat Prepcast. We pick one per week, not one boy, one girl, one for the whole state of Idaho.
That's a lot of wrestlers, especially after these two big events, right? You had oodles to pick from.
Yeah, and so we go with the freshman, Kiana Conrad from Blackfoot. Only 3 points total were scored against her the entire weekend at Rollie Lane, which is like unheard of. And then her closest match was 6-0, which is decent, but really not that close. So I mean, she took it to a whole nother level for Blackfoot this weekend. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, just exciting. And to see that kind of dominance from a freshman, I mean, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, geez.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. One more cool story that we shared on the Matt Chat Prepcast last night, Sean, and then we'll move on to basketball. Riker Vale from Bonneville just crossed 100 career wins this past week, as did DJ Niter from Idaho Falls. So we had two different individual wrestlers cross 100 wins in their career, which is phenomenal. But Riker Vale of Bonneville was battling, and I don't remember if it was the quarters or the semis or, but at one point he dislocated his jaw, Sean.
Just pop it, miss some Miyagi.
Yeah, it's exactly. He popped it back in and then just got back in there.
No one's gonna say he's not tough.
I mean,
I don't know what to say. That's amazing. Just pop that back in and go. And yeah, wow. But again, congrats to both those guys. 100 wins is amazing. You know how many opportunities you're going to get. Like you said, you have injuries that can happen, but to reach that 100 match win mark is an incredible feat.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that when I heard that story last night about Riker Vale. So it was just phenomenal. Pretty epic story there. So anyways, let's move on to basketball action, Sean, and we'll start in on the girls' side. A couple of big games that we were previewing on last week's show, and now we have a chance to break them down. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with 4A just because I have it here. But okay. We kind of talked about Skyline and Blackfoot in District 6 as that was going to kind of be a kind of a big matchup coming, and that happened on the 3rd of January. And Skyline took care of business, beating Blackfoot 63-43, which I kind of felt was a big time win for Skyline. I thought that game might be a little closer on paper, so I found that kind of interesting in the 4A matchups.
Yeah, it's all kind of coming to a head, right? Shelley 14-0 overall, 5-0 in the conference. Skyline now 11-3 overall, 4-0 in the conference. They were supposed to play last night at the Taj McGriz, Sean. Of course, like so many events, it got wiped out because of the bad weather. No word on when that is going to be made up. Selfishly, I want it to be at the very end of the regular season, although they're already playing Shelley at the very end of the season.
Last game. Oh, yeah. I don't know. They probably don't want to go that back to back, but
probably not.
But sometimes you can only schedule what you can schedule, and you got to get those conference games in. So that will be a interesting matchup, nonetheless.
Yeah, it's going to be really intriguing to see the battle between, the Shippen sisters, and then you look at Cannon for Shelley and the contrasting styles. Both of them, Shea Shippen especially can both go inside. They can both shoot it from the outside. They mirror each other almost in what they're able to do. So when we do finally get that matchup, Sean, it's going to be a really good one.
Yeah. And, last year that was probably the best basketball game. I think we covered one of the best by far that we covered last year at the Potato Cellar was Skyline versus Shelley, and went to overtime. And, Shippen and Cannon usually are defending each other too, so you have that interesting matchup, and I would expect nothing less but some fireworks when that happens.
Yeah. So right now, still officially on the schedule, January 25th in Shelley. The game at Skyline to be determined. TBD. We'll wait and see. We talked about, in the 3A ranks, Sean, Teton is the only undefeated team left. They're 16-0. Are they going to drop a game? We'll find out tonight when they go to Sugar Salem. This is the first big matchup. They'll play each other again in Teton on January 19th. But just last week, we talked about Teton and Snake River in this big non-conference matchup. Teton wins at 51-44, picking up the season sweep of the defending state champs from Snake River.
Yeah, and that was a game kind of had marked down because the first one was a little closer, so we were pretty excited to see what would happen. That Snake lost 51-57 in the first matchup, so Teton came in and kind of took care of business and undefeated, and they've just got some great athletes on that team, and I'm kind of excited to see where it goes from here.
Of course, Sugar is not, even with the record, you can't ever go into Sugar and expect an easy time, right? You're going to.
No, it's a rivalry. The Sugar team's young. I've seen them in action live, and they're quick. I would say that the speed is there. They might not have all the, the heavy knowledge of veterans, but their speed and athleticism will keep them in the game for sure.
Teton 16-0, South Fremont 12-2, Sugar 10-4. That is a combined total of 26-12 is 48-6, Sean. Those three teams all up there in the Mountain Rivers Conference. That's going to change eventually. They're all going to start playing each other, but pretty remarkable feat.
Yeah, that's it makes it tough, right? When it comes down to the end of the year, because those, you have your whole season, but really those last few games of the year become so important due to the limitations of who can make it and who's going to, get to state. So, you'd say the season's important, but let's be honest, districts, these district matchups are going to be super important. And then that tournament is just going to be unreal.
Yeah. Well, let's dip down to the 2A Southeast Idaho Conference, Sean, where again, the kind of this 3-team race between Malad and Bear Lake and Soda Springs. Now, here you have to look at the conference records. You can't look at the overall records because you'll see Malad at 13-2, which is great, and Bear Lake at 12-2, which is outstanding. But you'll see Soda Springs at 5-10, and you'll go, what's up with that? They're not in the equation. But Soda played such a rigorous schedule and they do this every year. You really can't look at their overall win-loss record. What is important is the conference marks, Sean, where Malad is 3-1, Bear Lake and Soda Springs are each 2-1, and they've all kind of beaten up on each other. If we look at Malad, they were able to get a 2-point win over Soda Springs on Saturday, 54-52. That came right after a 3-point loss to Bear Lake, though, 53-50. I mean, those are 2 one-possession games. That shows how tight this trio of teams really are.
Yeah, and in Bear Lake on the 4th got a win over Malad, 53-50, and I kind of thought that was a kind of a big win. But man, it could just go back and forth, and it could end up being a coin flip for a number 1 seed. But yeah, again, combined, you take away Soda's record, there wouldn't be. They would be kind of in that same conversation of, like 25 wins, 6 losses. So yeah, tough teams there.
I mean, Soda Springs has played 5 teams from Utah. They've played Star Valley, Wyoming, which is always a really tough team. They've played Grace this year, which is a juggernaut at the 1A D1 level. So yeah, 5-10, you can't really judge there. But so Soda has beaten Bear Lake by 8. And then Bear Lake beat Malad by 3. And then Malad beat Soda by 2. I cannot wait for the rematches to come. The first rematch that we will get, Sean, I want to make sure I'm not shortchanging anybody here. On January 18th, that's next Thursday, Soda Springs is going to host Bear Lake. That looks like the next domino to fall is going to be on the 18th. So another data point for us to use. Yeah.
And then Malad plays Bear Lake on January 20th, and then Soda Springs on the 24th. So it's going to be boom, boom, boom.
And all of these teams are deep, like really incredibly deep. I mean, Malad has a ton of freshmen and sophomores on the combined, varsity JV roster this year. In fact, I think they only have 2 seniors, Oakley Hebden and Hallie Horsley. And otherwise, it's pretty much all freshmen and sophomores. And Bear Lake is kind of the same way.
Yeah, Bear Lake's kind of the same way. I believe they only have 1 senior. on their team. But Bear Lake's got some last names you've heard, right? Like Shaw and Neal. They have the brothers and sisters of last names that you've heard before, and both of them have been playing very well for Bear Lake. So, man, both young teams, that's dangerous when you play that well and you're one senior on the team for Bear Lake. That's crazy.
Yeah, Sadie Shaw, and as you mentioned, Crockett is a name that we're used to hearing down there, and Taisley Neal certainly as well. So yeah, Bear Lake continuing to excel. They are on a 6-game winning streak, Sean. They just beat Aberdeen 64-7. So Coach Ken Wells doing a fantastic job with these young ladies. Last year, Bear Lake got to district, Sean, and they were the number 4 seed overall. And they really, they went 7-18 overall, but they got the districts. They knocked off Malad. They upset a Malad team that had gone, 10 or 12-10 in the regular season and ended their season. And I think that upset at districts, now they fell short in the 3rd place game against Westside and didn't get to state. But I think that upset of Malad at districts last year has really laid the foundation for this run from Bear Lake that we're seeing this year. And then of course there's Soda Springs, the old hat, right? They got to the championship game last year. They have been the premier program in this league for some time. Going back even 20 years. And they have a couple of pieces remaining from this big run, right? They've got, Yannetti Garbett, in her senior season, and Kinley Osborne and Kemp, but they did lose some pieces like Zippy Thompson and some of those other players from last year. So they're this is kind of their big push here with this talented group of seniors. Yeah,
you see Soda has a quite a few more seniors than these other teams. So it's going to be the age-old battle of youth versus old, right? Or ageless.
Yes, for sure. All right. And then let's wrap up here. 1A D1, 1A D2. Nothing new. Grace, still rolling. They're 11-3, 1-0 in league play. They did beat Butte County, who is expected to be their closest challenger. But this 1A D2 Rocky Mountain Conference, Sean, continues to be interesting, to say the least. The latest glance at the standings shows Mackey at 2-0, Rockland at 3-0, Grace Lutheran at 3-1, Leadore at 2-1, Water Springs at 2-1. That's 5 teams all within a game of each other in the loss column.
Yeah, and Rockland went and played Richfield on the 4th and lost only by 8. And Richfield's normally a very good team too, so that that's a loss for Rockland, but a tough team. It's going to be, it's going to come down to the wire there. And again, like this conference is so big, only certain games count as a conference game. So it'll be kind of interesting to see towards the tail end how this pans out.
It's hard to pick a favorite here. And we talked about this in the preseason, right? The preseason coaches poll was all over the place. Mackey was our official, first place team in our preseason coaches poll that we conducted. And, they've been playing well. They're 7-6. They played a very rigorous schedule. They are off to a 2-0 start in league play with wins over North Gem and Water Springs. They did beat Leadore in a non-conference game, Sean, back in December by 12. But, I expect Leadore to be much improved from that. There's something about Leadore. I still just feel it in my gut. I think Leadore has the pieces to get to state again.
Yeah, Leadore's always kind of the stepsister, right? We talk about them, but really they always come on really strong. Leadore team is a team that comes on strong at the end at districts, and you could see that again for sure coming up as this season concludes.
And I know all my Grace Lutheran people are going, hey, we're 9-2. We're not chopped liver over here. 2-1 in conference. I will say Grace Lutheran did just play Rockland on Friday night. They lost by 15, 45-30. So maybe, I would put, Rockland, Leadore, Mackey in that top tier. And then I would put, Grace Lutheran right below them in the next tier. But they've got room to make a move here. They still play Leadore and Mackey. They're going to play Mackey on Friday night, weather permitting. So that'll be at Grace Lutheran. Be a good matchup.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. And it'd be a good kind of balancing to see maybe where everyone stands after that game.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's move over to boys basketball, where there isn't a lot of drama, Sean, right? 5A Madison's kind of the favorite. Hillcrest in 4A in District 6. 3A, Teton and Sugar are going to battle. Snake River is kind of the favorite in District 5. 2A is somewhat open, 1A D1, 1A D2. But the big matchup everybody's been waiting for, round 1 tonight, Preston at Pocatello at the Pit. What a matchup this is going to be.
Yeah, just you couldn't draw it up any better. There's only 4 teams in boys basketball that have 11 wins. 2 of them are Preston and Hillcrest, and the other 2, I believe, are in 1A D2. But I mean, wins aside, this is going to be a battle. I think, you have a Pocatello team, you kind of know what you're getting. You have a Preston team that just does everything so well, and is well coached, and they just have a lot of 6'1" guys that all play wing and can dribble and slam dunk it. So I think it'll be a phenomenal matchup. And the thing is, they're going to play at least probably like 5 more times.
You're right.
I mean, the conference is only Preston, Pocatello, and Century, and the reality is you're going to get those 2 conference matches, and what team can beat the other team twice, right? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. Can you put them away 2 times in a row and clinch that place to state? But I think it should be a really, really good game. I don't think whatever the end result is, does that mean that team's the best team? No, I think you could see them go back and forth. You could see one team lose both matchups and win districts. I don't think we can really pencil anything in yet, and you can never really pencil out a Preston Indians basketball team. But the Thunder, now the new number 1 team, have been playing really well, and they've got some quality wins. They went and played tournaments, and you got the Boise State commit Julian Bowie, and really and Drew Contreras has been playing really well. A lot of people have said they've been very impressed with his ability on the basketball court this season to kind of help out Bowie on the offensive side. So, man, what a matchup.
Yeah, we talk about Julian Bowie all the time, but they bring back, Drake Contreras is elevating his game. They bring back Kessler Vaughn, right, who can get hot in a hurry.
Yep.
They still have Gage Ontiveros inside. That's the big question for me is how does Pocatello offset Preston's, trapping, pressing defense? Can their ball handlers, and I'm kind of looking at Kessler Vaughn here, he's going to have to do a lot of that. How do they handle that? And then for Preston, I'm looking at, all right, how do you stop this 6'10" giant inside and Gage Ontiveros, right?
Yeah, Preston's, wouldn't say is lengthy or as tall as they've been in the past, but I think they do a good job moving off ball screens and double teaming when appropriate. I think, you can't, Julian Bowie's going to get his points, but can you stop and shut down enough of the other players of the Thunder to put yourself in a position? And then the big question for me is who's going to be the guy for Preston to kind of like lead the charge? They're always so balanced, and they don't care if so-and-so gets 10 points and so-and-so, but I think to win these type of games, you kind of need that hero or, that knight in shining armor who's going to kind of step up and kind of lead the guys. And I'll take the shot. You know what I mean? Kind of just that leader as kind of Bowie is for the Thunder.
Yeah. You need that alpha for sure. Pocatello better win this game, because if they don't, now you're looking at having to go to Preston just to try and earn a split of the regular season title and that first round bye, which is so important because it's one less game at districts, right? You can keep everybody a little fresher, and you could throw everything out in that first game to really at districts to set the tone. If they don't win at home, and the Pit's a tough place to go win, but Preston's an even tougher place to go win. So you gotta defend the home floor tonight if you're Pokey.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, if you're gonna rank tough places to play, man, I would say the Pit and Preston gotta be in the top there. I think those those are hard places to go. I'm a big fan of the Pit. I think it's one of the best places to go watch a high school basketball game. But Preston too. They're going to be packed. It's going to be packed at the Pit tonight. These games, everyone in the community comes out and watches, and it'll be packed. You go for the show.
That's right. Go for the show. That might be our title. Let me jot that down real quick. Go for the show. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was just going to say, and your thought of, winning and then having to go down and win Preston's big too. But I just don't think it matters. I think even let's just say theoretically, if Preston loses both, I still think Preston could come in and find a way to win in districts. I don't know how important it is being such a small bracket, but maybe you're right. But in my head, I feel like who can win 2 games at that tournament, like can go out and not let someone back in. And it'll be interesting to see. Last year Preston got 1, but then had to go back to the Pit and couldn't really get the gas going. And so maybe you're right on your side that if Preston can reverse that, get that win and put it away at home and not have to go back to the Pit, who knows? But I think it's just who can win 2 games.
Right. Well, it's crucially important because it's a 3-team district, right? Pocatello, Preston, Century. And we haven't talked about Century a lot. It's not that Century's bad, just compared with Pocatello and Preston. They're just not quite there yet, but they're still a good team. So that's the danger is, okay, if you don't win the conference title in the regular season, you don't get that first round bye. You're the 2 seed. You have to play Century at your place to start. That's going to be a tough game. Ryan Frost is a great coach, especially in the postseason. And you are going to have to grind it out and get a win over a Century team while the other team gets to stay fresh. They get a night off. And then more importantly, if you win that first game with Century, then you have to travel to the other venue, right? And we've talked about what great home court advantages they are for Preston and Pokey. Having that home court advantage is going to be huge at districts. Yeah,
that could be the determining factor for sure. And I think it's just going to be a real grind. And I think everyone that's looking at 4A rankings is kind of holding their breath to kind of see what happens tonight, because you have, Pocatello, Hillcrest, and Preston in those top 3 spots. And it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens.
It all starts tonight. Sean, you've got a shout out here in the chat. Hi, Dad, from Elliot.
Oh, hey. Well, that'd be my son.
School's out for today.
Oh, yeah. He's with Grandma and Grandpa.
Fun. That's cool.
That's the punishment. If he doesn't listen, he has to listen to the podcast.
Oh, man. That's torturous for sure.
Rough, yeah.
That's funny. Well, the last thing we wanted to touch on before we got out of here was the Butte County boys basketball team at the 1A D1 ranks. Now, of course, earlier this fall, Butte County won their first football championship in school history. And then every single member of the varsity basketball team, Sean, played football. So they were, Coach Mindy Gamet said in their season preview for Butte County that it's going to take us a couple of weeks to build up, because we just went on this big, deep football run. We're pretty beat up and bruised, and like every single player on the varsity and JV played football. And yet here they are, 9-2 overall, 2-0 in conference play. I'll admit, in my head coming in, I kind of leaned towards Grace in the preseason, just because Grace has been to state so many times over the years, and they have some big guys, inside, and some good athletes. And yet, Butte County won the first matchup against Grace before the holiday break by 10, 59-49. The rematch comes Friday night at Grace. Must-win game now for the Grizzlies, but what an impressive start it's been for Butte County.
Yeah, and and you look at Butte County's losses. They lost to Wood River, which is a 4A, and it was a close 44-56, and they lost to an Oakley team close to 56-60. So Butte County could be undefeated very easily at this point in the season after making that transition, and that is not easy to do. to transition from football to basketball. And it's not like they have a million guys coming in to fill those roles. So for those guys to shift gears like that is very impressive.
And then further adding to the Butte County story, most people heard about this during the football season, but of course, Dylan Waymeyer, who is a senior at Butte County High School, was a offensive and defensive lineman for the football team, collapsed during a game, had to be rushed to the hospital, life-threatening injuries. He is on the mend and recovering, doing great. He was in Holt Arena for the football championship, got to leave the hospital and be there with his team, which was great. But he's still recovering. And Coach Gamet, Mindy Gamet, said in our season preview for Butte County, like, obviously what happened to Dylan just in terms of recovery hurts. She said, but at the same time, we were counting on him to give us good minutes inside in the post, because he's like 6'1", 6'2". And so they're definitely missing that production with Dylan Waymeyer, but Dylan is able to be with the team, obviously just not playing. And he's kind of a coach this year. He's like an extra coach on the bench. It's kind of a cool deal.
Putting him to work for free. Wow. And that's great. You get some peer interaction, and they know, he's going to know what they need to do, and he's going to be able to tell them, and kids can talk to kids differently than coaches can talk to kids. So that's a great asset to have. And just a great, that he can still be part of it and be part of his team. And he's losing out on playing time, but he isn't losing out on the time with his friends and his team and his coaches. And that's really the most important part, because that's what you're going to remember.
Yeah. So Dylan, student coach Dylan Waymeyer, as he still recovers from his traumatic, brain injury that he suffered during the football season. So, but we're keeping an eye on the Pirates. Big game Friday night in Grace, and a must win for the Grizz, like we said, kind of for the same reason, right? It's a 3-team district with Grace and Chalice and Butte County, kind of like Pokey and Preston and Century. So a lot of good basketball as we are into the new year here. Sean, we're going to start broadcasting games again on IdahoSports.com. East Idaho game night starts up next week. Stay tuned to the homepage at IdahoSports.com and all of our social media accounts. You can always see what we're up to by clicking on the game streams tab on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. So warm up those vocal cords, Sean. We need you.
Man, I did senior night for Century Girls last night, and my voice already hurts. So I got to get with the trainer. I don't know, but yeah. It's you get to hear me more than you wanted to, guys.
More than we bargained for. That's what we always deliver here on the East Idaho Prepcast. Hey, big thanks to everybody that tuned in. Enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody. If you are traveling, going to be really nasty weather-wise. Please be safe. We want you back here next week for another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast. But until then, for Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in on IdahoSports.com.